Welcome to 10 Minute Climate, the podcast brought to you by Beaverbrook Energy. Join Max.
Hi, I'm Max.
And Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony.
Who between them have got over 70 years of experience in the energy industry, and they're here to share it with you. It's everything you need to know, delivered in just 10 minutes. So let's get started.
We talk a lot about climate change and fossil fuels and everything else. But it's really simple. It's too much sunlight coming in and not going back into space.
Put curtains up.
Well, exactly. And the thing is that we can actually solve the problem now without stopping using fossil fuels, without all this renewable stuff. We just need to do what's called geoengineering.
Yeah.
Just and there's a number of ways of doing it. You do space mirrors, big mirrors in space, reflect back the sun. I mean, that's quite complicated. You've got to put the mirrors up there.
Paint countries white.
Yeah, albedo, increase the albedo of the world. The amount of reflectivity of the world back to space is critical. We're keeping too much of the sun's heat in.
Yep.
So if we painted, I mean, it's quite serious. If we painted all of our roofs white.
Well, North Africa, southern Spain, everything's painted white.
Yeah, because
there's a reason.
Cool.
Yeah.
We reflect more of the sun back to space. That would help.
Yeah. Ping pong balls was one I heard.
Ping pong balls?
Yeah, you basically, you take the whole world's manufacturing capability, you make ping pong balls and you pour them on the world's oceans. And you stop evaporation and you reflect back sunlight off the world's oceans because all the white ping pong balls are floating on the surface.
Emily wants to ask a question.
Won't that kill all the fishies?
No.
Why
They're
not?
floating. You need a big mouth to swallow a ping pong ball.
Like plastic pollution in the oceans? I mean, plastic.
Yeah, but it's floaty plastic, isn't it? It's not sinky in the fish.
You could make them big or something. I mean, It ain't going to happen. But there is one solution, and people are doing this already, which is sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere. No, it works.
I know.
Not that much. About 5% of the current sulfur dioxide going in the atmosphere, injected in the stratosphere, up a bit, would reflect back sun's rays, pretty much solving the problem.
Some of these things are not quite mad scientists, but laboratory simulation things.
Well, someone's saying there's a company called Chasing Sunsets, I think. And what they do is they take balloons, they fill them with sulfur dioxide, they release them into the air. The first ones they did from Baja California in Mexico. Mexican government got furious and banned it. And everybody gets really upset. But if you put that sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere, and it's quite difficult to get it up there, these guys using balloons.
Well, I do know
it works.
I do know of a system that would make that happen, and it would solve a number of the world's problems that we have at the moment. Is what you do underneath Yellowstone Park in America. There's a caldera of the largest active volcano on the planet, and about every 600,000 years it explodes because they've checked all the way around the globe as the plates have shifted. If you set that off by some form of device, loads of sulfur dioxide will go up into the atmosphere.
But Emily's got a question.
Sorry, I just Googled sulfur dioxide and it's a corrosive acidic gas which is predominantly produced from the combustion of coal or crude oil, and direct exposure to it is associated with asthma and chronic bronchitis and can lead to irritation and constriction of the airways. So yeah, I'd be mad if I came across a balloon full of that.
But it also acts as a very good dampener on sunlight.
It is, but you put it in the stratosphere. So
one of the near human airways.
Not near human airways. You put it right out there. One of the interesting things that's happened in the last 5 years, which hasn't had an enormous amount of debate except in specific scientific circles, is that the bunker fuel used in shipping had the sulfur removed in 2020. And it massively reduced sulfur dioxide emissions at ground level or sea level, right? For the reasons you just said. So lots of good air pollution reasons. However, it's had a huge effect on global warming because that sulfur dioxide was reflecting sunlight. And what we realize is that the amount of sulfur dioxide we've been pumping out, particularly from ships using very dirty fuel, had been masking the amount of extra temperature that we've had in the world. And there's a guy called James Hansen, who very, very famous, well-respected scientist, who was the first guy in the 1980s in America to really make global warming a thing and produce the first forecasts. And this has been his huge crusade in the last few years, saying this sulfur dioxide, we didn't realize this was such a problem. And because we're now not emitting it, we actually realise we're warming much faster than we were. And it's one of the things that people put forward as to why global warming is accelerating right now, why the temperatures are going up much faster. So we've kind of already been doing geoengineering with sulfur
Yeah.
dioxide, but in the lower levels of the atmosphere, which cause all the human health issues.
Yeah, you'd set off volcanoes.
Well, it did. It was. We had this before in 1816. Mount
Right.
Tambora, somewhere in Indonesia, I think. Huge volcanic eruption.
Yeah, cause a nuclear winter, basically.
Well, it did.
What
It was
yeah.
the year without summer, they called it, and
Yeah.
it was 2 to 3 degrees of global cooling because of the amount of sulfur dioxide in the
Big
atmosphere.
volcanoes have that effect even now, not on the same scale. And in fact, I think the previous great wiping out of life on planet before the asteroids that did for the dinosaurs was volcanoes the previous time, because
Changing the atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. There was a big volcanic eruption 2 or 3 years ago that it actually pushed a lot of water vapor out, and it's controversial because a lot of kind of climate deniers say that this is the reason why temperatures have gone up over the last couple of years. And I'm not a climate scientist, but from what I understand is that's not quite the case. It was a certain amount of water vapor, but it didn't get into the right places in the atmosphere. It didn't do that.
I don't think they realise the scale of the energy that we're talking about, because when you're talking about Tambora, that was a volcano on a scale that's like every couple of centuries. It's not something that, like a volcano. Believe me, it would be world news that the size of the volcano that would need to go off to make that difference. And it didn't matter what came out of it.
But what's interesting, what I think is going to happen, right, is right now, no one wants to talk about geoengineering.
Yeah.
Practically anybody, because the scientists are like, we could actually do stuff. We haven't got into cloud seeding,
Renewables
or
are
ocean
cheaper.
seeding, but it's not necessarily cheaper actually. But no one would talk about it. No one will invest in it because the scientists are saying, well, if we do that, then we're not going to run out of renewables. We're just saying to the fossil guys, hey, keep going, and we'll paper over the cracks. We'll put a plaster on this with geoengineering. The thing is that we're not reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. However many renewables we are putting up, and it is fantastic, it's only replacing growth in energy. And last year we had the biggest increase in carbon dioxide ever.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're not solving the problem. Pretty soon, people are going to say, actually, we need to take geoengineering seriously. And I think it'll be led by fossil fuel producing nations who go, we want to protect our economy.
Mm-hmm.
Climate change is getting worse. And actually, there is something interesting here. And I think we're going to hear a hell of a lot more about it.
But it has to be a global initiative.
Why?
You can't do a climate engineering, geoengineering project for your country, because that's not the way the weather systems and everything else work.
What if you're Saudi Arabia? You've got a massive oil industry.
Yep.
You want to keep it going. You know what? You can do the geoengineering as long as you can pay for it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone else benefits or disbenefits, but you can do it on your own. Protect your own industry. You go, hey, what's the climate problem? No, we've brought it all down by a degree.
Yeah, except that you then changed the whole rain pattern for northern India and wiped out the entire rice crop for the next half century. I mean, this is the problem.
There are risks.
Yeah.
Big risks.
They are risks.
Yeah.
To the odd billion Indians who are going to starve to death.
It's true. And the other thing you can do is iron seeding in oceans. You spread iron filings across the ocean, which cause plankton. No, we're on dodgy territory. Plankton, algae, whatever it is. Some plant loves the iron, grows, dies, drops to the bottom of the ocean. And that's sucking in carbon. Again, we know that works.
And then as they decompose, you turn the sea acidic.
No, they don't decompose. They go so far down that they just lock in the carbon in the bottom of the ocean. It's technology that is understood.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. The second and third order effects are not understood if you do it at a global scale.
Yeah, that's always we thought it was a good idea at the time, sort of thing.
So there are a few ways of doing geoengineering: sulfur dioxide, ocean seeding, and probably one of the ones that's moving fast forward is advanced rock weathering, where basically you get particular types of rock from places, mines, I guess, and you crush it up and you put it across fields, and it sucks in. It's a particular type of calcium carbonate, I think, and it sucks in carbon, and it sits in the soil, and it works well.
Yep.
But the problem is, how do you pay for it? with all carbon credits.
And distribute it and
Yeah, the distribution, the mechanics of it are all fine, but you need a carbon price
money.
in the hundreds
You
of
need
dollars.
a lot of energy to make it happen, and you need a lot of money to pay for the energy and the distribution. And I mean, imagine if you were saying, well, okay, we're just going to sprinkle this stuff across all of the unurbanized land in Europe, right? So that's 98% of the land surface area of Europe. So how long
it's
is
money.
Yeah.
How do you pay for it? I mean,
Well,
you've got to have a carbon tax or subsidies. It's the same thing, ultimately. It's just expensive. The question, I suppose, is do you have fossil fuels plus some form of geoengineering, or maybe direct air capture, which is, again, very expensive, but is basically fossil fuels plus cost, or do you have an entirely new system like wind and solar, renewables, batteries?
I think, as with everything, the solution that will become obvious to everybody eventually is not one technology or one approach, but a combination of all these things, because then we're not putting all our eggs in one basket.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It really helps us grow and continue bringing you valuable content. If you're curious to learn more about Beaverbrook Energy and how we're navigating the future of energy, feel free to reach out to us directly. And for those looking for quick, actionable insights on the energy transition, be sure to subscribe to our 10-second climate newsletter, delivered every weekend with essential intelligence to help business leaders stay ahead of the curve. We appreciate you listening, and we look forward to having you join us again next time. Stay informed, stay engaged, and take care.